Howdy, and welcome to Haydn Behind the Music Stand. I'm your host, Patty Ryan, and with me is Erich Rieppel, who is the principal timpani of Minnesota Orchestra, and we'll be talking about hockey. Welcome, Erich. Thanks for being here today.
Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah. So I first met you when I was doing bowings in the Minnesota Orchestra library, and this musician would walk into the library and kick Ari out of her seat and sit down and listen to the latest recording of one of your performances and saunter off and be really friendly, but, you know, just, okay, this is this random bearded guy walking in. And you kept kind of visiting every now and then. And I guess maybe my icebreaker moment personally with you is one time I was doing my bowings and I knocked over my bubbly water and I made a huge mess everywhere. And I was so embarrassed because I was like, oh my God, this is in front of one of the musicians of the Minnesota Orchestra. And you're so chill about it. And I can't remember. You said something that just made me feel way more comfortable with the situation. So thank you for that. And then since then, we have so many mutual friends that have come and visited Minnesota that we've just always hung out in big, giant groups. And it's always, always a fun time hanging out with you, Erich.
I appreciate that. Yeah, I don't know what I said either, but, I worked as a librarian for a while at Indiana. And so I know the culture in a library and how it's a lot of quiet moments. And then there's sometimes smooth conversation. And then something tragic will happen, like someone just rips an entire page or something irreparable happens. And yeah, you need to have a sense of humor about these things. So yeah.
That's true. Yeah. So, I feel like you're an extension of the Minnesota Library family.
That's high praises. Thank you.
Okay.
I really mean that. That's great. Thank you.
So, what is your most insane performance story?
The main one that sticks out to me is from my freshman year of college when I was at Indiana University. 18-year-old, I believe it was the first concert I'd played in college. And I didn't have much professional or any performing experience, really. I wasn't in a youth orchestra in high school. I played in a regional orchestra in the small town I grew up in, and I only played a few shows with them. And then I did, concert band at the high school, and really not many performances under my belt at that time. And just the natural anxiety of going to a major music school and trying to impress people and trying to improve and all this, and you're still growing up too. And so there's all this intense emotional drama within yourself at that time anyways. So it was my very first performance. And it was with the top bands at Indiana. And so that was already, I was already under a lot of pressure there.
Right.
I really cared. I wanted to do very well, but I wanted to also have, be confident. And I was ready for this first performance. We, did 15 rehearsals, whatever. And I thought I knew the program order.
Uh-oh.
And I'm pretty certain, to this day, Dr. Pratt, you're so great, learned so much from you, but I'm pretty certain we rehearsed the dress rehearsal in one order, and then we performed in a slightly different order, at least a few pieces.
That's not normal.
Yeah, you can definitely move around the dress rehearsal from the concert performance, but I just remember thinking, the dress is one order and the concert was a different order, and it just messed with me. I was young. I should have known not to do what I did.
Sure.
For a band concert where there are many, many pieces, which is walk off stage and go award myself with a sip of water from a crappy water fountain that was 30 yards away.
Okay.
So I, proudly gate off into the off stage. And as I'm walking, I'm halfway to the water fountain. I'm waiting for the other piece to play that's on stage in the performance. And I hear the beginning of Porgy and Bess, an arrangement of Porgy and Bess, which has a big timpani solo at the beginning.
Okay.
At the very beginning, 8 bars in or less. So I'm walking the opposite direction, and I hear this music, and just my heart and my whole ego just dropped through the floor, just like a bag of rocks, just dropped through the floor with embarrassment and what should I do now? I had an honest thought of maybe I should just keep walking. Because my life is over. My career is done. Everyone is going to hate me.
Right.
And I have nowhere else to go but then to walk out of this building and just walk somewhere far away from here. And that was a split second of that intense potential. And I decided, okay, I guess I'm going to walk back on stage. And the thing is, the timpani were on the opposite side of the stage from where I was walking. So I had to walk across, in addition to on stage where the whole audience can see it, I had to walk across the whole stage. So I did sort of a mini gallop across the stage. And for a moment I was I think I can make this. And then I was a quarter of the way to my spot and my solo happens. And there was just silence for 5 seconds.
Oh no.
And I was I guess I didn't make it. Luckily, it was just 5 seconds. Like, it wasn't like a cadenza or something, but like, it was enough for me to feel like, you know, wow, I'm never going to make it in this career. Like, I can't even remember when to play or when to walk off stage. And Dr. Pratt, to his praise, he recognized that, you know, I was probably really beat up about that and like not in a good mood. And he was a really great conductor, great educator too, and great musician. He was trying to encourage me throughout the rest of that performance because I was really down. And so he, in his conducting and his interactions, he was always trying to encourage me. And after the performance, I said, I'm so sorry. I think I screwed up the program order. And he looked at me as like, you know, maybe we did rehearse that differently in the dress, but I don't know. I'm not going to blame him. I shouldn't have walked off stage and I should have been more attentive. But I remember, I went home. I went to my dormitory and I was horribly beat up about it. I was like, I'm going to listen to Mahler 9 by myself and I'm going to, you know, just bask in this like existential moment.
Right.
Like freshman year, first concert.
Yeah.
Like trying to be impressionable, trying to impress people or trying to.
Oh, totally. I know, it's a lot of pressure. I think that some people don't realize that when you first go to university or college or whatever. It's like first impressions are huge because it really sets the tone for how people treat you, how faculty treat you.
Absolutely. No, I mean, all of that, you know, you get all these aspects like weighing down of you, like my career, the future, which is very unknown at that moment. And then, teachers, your parents, your people your age, people a little bit older than you, people even younger than you. All these things I'm pretty certain it's the same for everyone. They just like are weighing down on you with intense pressure. And so you have a bad performance in masterclass or like what I had, it affects you deeply. Right. And I think maybe, you know, if there's a moral to the story is that I continued. I didn't walk out of the building and far away from Indiana University. I went back. I owned up to it. I had a night where I had to reflect on it and bask in the emotion and, you know, had its toll really set on me. But then I kept going. You know, I woke up the next morning, practiced, and went to class and just kept going. So, I mean, these like embarrassing and like really tough moments, they're not to be minimized. You take the punches and you keep going because that's how this career kind of works.
Absolutely. No, I think that's a huge, thank you for sharing that story. I think that's a huge testament of the perspective of a incoming student to a university trying to, as I was saying, there's like, it feels like there's so much pressure, but at the same time, that's the moment to make those mistakes at the same time, right? So it's because that's within a safety net of, it's not the professional world. It's not something that is going to be recorded live on bubble, you know, all these random things. You're still a student, you're still learning. If you were to give up completely in that moment, then you would not be the Erich Rieppel that you are today. Yeah.
I mean, and it's for anyone, like, I mean, everyone has stories like these, like, you know, and this is why your podcast is so cool, is like everyone's going to share these, you know, very personal, detailed stories, and they're all going to be different. But you have to keep on going despite the anxiety and the uncertainty and embarrassments that may happen sometimes in this highly intense career.
Yeah. Thanks again for sharing that. Are you ready for some Spitfire questions?
Yeah, hit me.
Okay. Mahler or Bruckner?
Mahler. What? Come on.
I don't know how he writes for, how Bruckner writes for Timpani, but...
Sparingly.
Okay. I see. Debussy or Ravel?
Probably Ravel. Debussy for piano works, but probably Ravel as far as the music that I actually know and love of between those two. Yeah, it's a tough one.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. Cats or dogs?
Dogs.
Appetizers or desserts?
Oh, gosh. I think appetizers, but I do have a serious sweet tooth.
Yeah.
That I'm not ashamed of. However, I rarely have desserts. I did have a $11 milkshake the other night.
Nice.
So I guess appetizers with friends, desserts just for me by myself.
I see. Gotcha. Yeah. Okay. You're not going to share your desserts.
No, hell no.
Okay. Sparkling or still water?
Again, that's tough. Sparkling, I don't know if these require explanation, but like liqueurs really messed me up in the intestines for some reason.
Oh, wow.
But I do like, you know, fizzy water generally, but
But that company for some reason gets you?
It's that company, yeah.
Huh. Fan favorite question, alternate universe musical instrument?
I think, well, piano is, and I play piano at a very amateur level, but if I could be an expert at another instrument, it'd be piano.
Yeah, which is still within the percussion family, so.
Yes, they would never, you know, admit to it, but that is true.
Early bird or night owl? I think I know the answer.
Yeah.
Anyone who's ever hung out with Eric knows he's a night owl.
Yes.
Pandemic guilty pleasure?
Ooh. Well, I'd say reacclimating myself to music I loved in high school.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Any band names or people you want to drop?
Well, I'll just list some genres.
Okay, sure.
And maybe not just the high school like nostalgia, but also what it meant and like where it could lead. And I was certainly into metal.
Yeah.
And into certain kinds of math metal. It's not universal though. It's not like the entire genre. It's just like certain bands, certain songs, and how that kind of translated during this pandemic for me, exploring avant-garde jazz and going into artists that I definitely would not have explored if it weren't for the pandemic, I don't think. So the kind of insanity and nonsense that can happen in metal and how that feeling, that raw creation of sorts is also represented in avant-garde jazz. I think those two kind of connected into not a guilty pleasure. I don't feel guilty about it, but like it's something that was created by the pandemic, and I don't think I would have explored so much if it weren't for the pandemic.
Favorite professor shout out?
My percussion professor, main teacher, primary teacher at Indiana, John Tafoya. I mean, I worked with him over 6 years, and even before I got to school, he was already helping me out in master classes I'd seen or summer camps where I saw him. And he just guided me and pushed me in ways I didn't even know I could be pushed, and with, certain moments standing out where I really needed to hear certain words or certain attitude type. And another professor, hugely influential, was one of our conducting faculty at IU, Indiana University, David Efron. He really was such a force around the school and in his performances and the way he led rehearsals. And he really felt like of a world that maybe our modern technological world can't grasp, the kind of music making that seems like truly magical. And I worked with him in a variety of fashions, and we developed a relationship over the 6 years I was there, and I won't forget many, many stories with him, and also my main percussion teacher, John Tafoya.
Nice.
Yeah.
Most inspired musical hero of any genre?
That's tough. Hero. That's an interesting word, hero. When I was in college, I really worshiped Wilhelm Furtwängler, the conductor. I just thought he was quite religious about his art and in the way he lived. He lived through his art, and the art gave him powers to live a certain way also. How he protected Jews in the Berlin Philharmonic during the Third Reich, and like how he was a staunch supporter of Jewish music, and how he stayed in Germany to fight that battle and never joined the Nazi Party. And I just thought that was very heroic, truly heroic. And how he created music, therefore his music had it reflected the times too, even though it was Beethoven or whatever. So he like reflected the times in his music making. So that probably is one of my better answers. But my father and my mother also, just as musical forces, being so inspired, and how they would describe music to me at a very young age, which I didn't understand at all, but I would be influenced by just the emotion and the depth of knowledge. Maybe didn't understand anything of what they were saying, but I just remember the spirit of it was there, and that was very inspiring at the beginning.
Wow, that's a different twist on that question than I was expecting, but it's like a beautiful answer. Also, like, what a tribute to your parents. Like, that's awesome.
Yeah.
I think we all know this, but we don't voice it enough, how much we are grateful for our parents and our musical upbringing and supporting that.
Of course. I mean, you can't hide from it. How that is such a the crux of like your environment, the crux of your being is nested in your parents. It's just the way it is. I mean, I don't think that we necessarily are our parents, of course. I am certainly very different from both of mine, and I think to a certain degree, you can create your own self no matter the situation to a certain degree, but your environment in which you grew up in certainly affects you.
Yeah, absolutely. Most transformative performance experience.
I don't get truly nostalgic, but I think a lot about development and how certain things happened in certain times that were important. I played Mahler 6 my junior year of college with David Efron, this conductor I was speaking about. And that was a standalone piece for me at the time. It still is, I think. But at the time, it was like this, just on such an unreachable pedestal. I was afraid to study it. I didn't want to ruin how important it was for me sonically, that I didn't want to know the secrets that were in the score or in the timpani part, or I didn't want to like think of it as like, oh, I'm going to play timpani to this. Like, I wanted to just be this clear, unmoving, unshattered event that would always affect me a certain way sonically in such a titanic and beautiful way. But when I actually came to studying it and performing it, it was very emotional, and I just couldn't believe I was performing such a work. I was 20 years old, and to play it along with other people who had progressed with me at IU, and that was a very moving performance.
Wow, that's awesome. What a way of describing. There are certain pieces that we hold closest to us from just, as you say, developmental reasons or something, and you put them on pedestals and you don't want to touch them because they're so meaningful to you. But yeah, it's a very interesting way to describe that. How it's like you just wanted to be a part of it, but not actually like know the inner workings of it. Although you eventually do. Now you do, right? But
yeah,
but it's still a difference of like respect or something, that you're not like getting down and dirty with it. Like you're trying to ascend to be that way.
Yeah, exactly. It was almost a fear. It was like, I don't want to get into the details and start like thinking in this very like critical way about the piece, or like what should I do with this part?
Right.
Infuse your ego, I wanted to just stay there. However, now on the other side of it, I think the more knowledge, the better. And it can only improve your listening experience, improve you as an artist, improve you as an artistic listener as well, to know more. Yeah,
cool. Desert island piece of any genre?
Yeah, it's probably going to be Mahler 6.
I was going to say, it's maybe Mahler 6, isn't it? Okay.
Yeah. Runner-ups are Mahler 9, Sibelius 5, Sibelius 2, Mahler 2 maybe. Somewhat standard stuff maybe. But yeah, Mahler 6 is probably it.
Nice. Okay. You made it through the Spitfire questions. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Okay. Now I'm going to attempt my triangle.
Okay.
So prior to recording, I just, this is always what happens with me and Eric, is I ask him how to play a percussion instrument, and then he really tells me how to do it. And I'm trying to remember, okay, so I got to hold this here, and my wrist goes this way, and then I do...
Okay, you're close. Now, you got to hold it up, like in front of you. So you're staring at the conductor, right? Like through the triangle almost. Yeah. Okay. So it's like this portal that you're entering of triangle overtones as you strike it once.
Okay.
So strike, and then your right hand needs, Perfect. Now we're talking.
Okay. Let's just stop there.
Okay.
Triangle 101. I don't think I passed that. It's okay.
Triangle 450.
450.
That was really great. Yeah.
Okay, thanks. All right, Eric, can you walk me through your musical origin story? When did you start music or drums or anything, what instrument you started with? Walk me through when you decided to go into it professionally, and then the steps along the way that took you to your job today.
All right. So my parents are musicians. Dad's a pianist. Mom is a harpsichordist. Didn't like their music, classical, whatever that was to me at that time. I just wasn't into it. I guess maybe one interesting thing I've been thinking about is I thought of it as old people's music, or what boring old people listen to, or church music. And I would always fall asleep in church. So none of that was exciting at all to me. Mm-hmm. So I got into drums first, and I got into drums through tap dancing.
What?
I was into dancing a lot when I was 3, 4, 5.
Well, this makes way more sense now. Okay, good.
Doesn't it? So I was tap dancing a lot, and I would watch Riverdance and Michael Flatley, and I would listen to the sounds of tap dancing. I was so interested in all these dictions and how cool it was. They were, making all these rhythms and these complicated rhythms with their feet. I thought that was just mind-blowing. I was super into that on many, many different levels, but certainly the rhythm and the dictions of tap dancing were really cool to me. So did tap dancing first for a while, and I was pretty good at it.
Can you still do it?
Oh, hell no.
Okay.
I stopped when I was around 8 or 9 when I started playing hockey.
Gotcha.
And then I got a macho kick and thought, well, hockey's obviously the thing I got to do. I really wish I continued with it, but it became somewhat embarrassing when I would show up late to hockey practice because I was at ballet.
Sure.
That's stupid, but I didn't know any better at the time.
Of course, yeah.
However, that did spur me getting into drums. So around 9, I started practicing drums. Wasn't very serious, did band and whatnot. Couldn't read music worth a damn. Wasn't very serious till late middle school. got into marching band, and my parents got me a drum set, started playing along to like Green Day and Simple Plan and, those cats. And marching band was where I got a lot of chops. And so I will never forget that, that was important to develop some chops, like playing loud, playing fast, playing complicated stuff. Our high school had a great marching band, and we had a really great percussion program, actually. My first teacher, Chad Prismus, I would definitely give a big shout out to him for consistently believing in me and pushing me. But I wasn't into this classical stuff still. And that really happened when I was 17 or so. And I was deciding, like in high school, I was confused. I was like, what the heck am I going to do with my life? What is, no clue. I was like, I'm kind of good at drums, but not really. I mean, there are other people that are good at drums in this high school. Like, why should I go into music? So I wasn't convinced I should do that, but I didn't know what else I could do or what else I was really interested in. My dad took a sabbatical from his university in a small town, Marshall, which is 3 hours west of Minneapolis. And we went to Vienna, Austria. And, he's a pianist and he has serious studies and studied in Munich for a year and had connections over there. And so he was taking me along with him for this 3-month period. And we saw concerts every day. We saw operas once a week, at least, chamber concerts, piano recitals, really the epicenter of classical music, where it's just revered in a different way. It's just thought about in a different way. And I didn't realize it could be treated this seriously and with truly like real authentic feeling, not some inauthentic sort of gimmicky version of classical music. It was with like real feeling. I'd never experienced it quite like that. I probably had, but I didn't treat it with respect until I got to Vienna when I was 17 years old. So that changed me forever. That was like, I feel like day one started then. And the living I had done up to then had been important and, still a part of me. But I feel like I had started a new path from then on. That was the end of junior year of high school. So I was pretty late to the game to getting into this stuff. I didn't know, what are the Beethoven symphonies? Who's Mahler? What's Tchaikovsky's deal? And what's Schubert's deal? So I was learning all that very quickly. And I practiced like crazy once I got back, and I wanted to go into music school. And I sort of was into the timpani, but all I knew is I wanted to be a part of this music somehow. And drums were the thing I was best at the time. And I couldn't even read music that well. This was really far behind in junior year of high school. Practiced like crazy, went to a summer camp at Indiana, met people who were way ahead of me and knew all the stuff about orchestral percussion, classical music. So my ego was quite low. And that I think was a good thing, so that I could work that much harder and be that much more incentivized to practice with a certain urgency. Senior year, I didn't play hockey as much. I didn't participate in the activities I normally participated in. I really focused on practicing like crazy. It's interesting. That incentive, the urgency created when you're behind. And I think it creates it, in hockey, our coaches say, you got to play with a chip on your shoulder. You're the one facing adversity, and so you need to fight that much harder.
Oh, I see.
So I had that mentality, like you have to fight that much harder because you're that much further behind, or that kind of mentality really actually might suit me well. Yeah, so I luckily got into Indiana University. I don't know how. I can't imagine what they were listening for, like what happened in the audition.
Well, yeah, but I think that's something that maybe if other students are listening to this episode, that people at colleges are listening for potential.
Yes.
Not necessarily complete expertise in something. They're listening for someone that they think can grow the most with them, and they know how to get them to the next step. So maybe that's what they found in you, is someone with a lot of drive and nerve and had a lot of potential.
I'd like to think so. And I think that is true, actually, because I remember I didn't play well some things, but I had played my own timpani composition. We did an interview portion, and I knew a few things about jazz, Latin percussion, just enough where it's like, okay, yeah, maybe this person just like has the drive and is like showcased enough potential. Like you said, that's very aptly said, I think. So
when you say you were playing drums before, I guess my question is, when did you start really pursuing timpani specific? Because it's my understanding that in the percussion realm, timpani is almost specialized and all the other instruments are in its own category.
True. I was interested, and more or less like, this probably is my instrument. I wouldn't say I was like in love with the instrument. I just loved that it participated in the orchestra. However, in percussion education, we study a little bit of everything. And I think that should be a point of pride for percussionists, is to know a little bit about everything, but then to specialize in something. Or you can be a specialist in everything and do a bunch of different gigs. But certainly you should have some study in a lot of genres of music and a lot of different percussion instruments. And then you can specify with timpani, orchestral percussion, jazz drumming, rock drumming, marimba, contemporary percussion, eventually. But yeah, there has to be this broad education before that.
Gotcha. Okay, so please continue down your path of origin.
So I got into Indiana, and yeah, I just worked like crazy while I was there. We had a great class. I continue to be inspired by the group of people that were there at that time. Those friendships and connections, I hope never cease to be a part of my life, because we had a just fantastic group of people, but as musicians too. And so we all pushed each other. We all played for each other and talked about music. You know, we'd stop practicing and go and talk about our practice sessions, or, you know, it would just be like this constant flow, this incredible energy about improving and all things music. It was really great feeling, actually. I got into conducting for a while because I got frustrated with, you know, the limits of orchestral percussion and timpani. It wasn't enough, and I thought that, you know, maybe I could give this conducting thing, because I seem to have this certain drive, and started doing it. And yeah, I started putting myself out there, and like end of sophomore year, junior year into senior year, I was a conductor. I was no longer timpani or percussion. I played timpani as to fulfill my like percussion performance degree, and then other percussion here and there. But I was thinking of myself truly as like, I'm not going to do this percussion thing anymore.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
Completely sold.
Yeah.
I was completely sold. I'm going to go to Germany. I was practicing piano. I was taking voice lessons. I was taking conducting lessons and sending my videos to different people, and totally set on it. So I was not practicing as much, particularly in my junior year and then part of my senior year. I applied to conducting schools, didn't get into any. And so my like fifth or sixth, seventh, eighth choice, plan G, was to do a master's in percussion at Indiana University. Luckily they accepted. I mean, I was not, you know, total garbage at that audition, I'm pretty certain, but they knew I was trying to do conducting. They'd known I was, you know, I talked about it with them. And so I'm very grateful they even accepted me. Once I wasn't accepted into conducting, I was like, I could have kept going. You don't necessarily need to bow down to defeat when it seems like all options are out. You can go to alternative paths if you're really driven. But I just took it as a sign. I just took it as like, maybe it's best if I continue with this really great thing of doing a master's at Indiana in percussion. That's really a great deal. And just go with that for a little bit. So I put all of that energy into conducting, and I put it back into percussion, and mainly into timpani. But percussion in general, I started to branch out a little more. And my master's is when I started really being like, okay, I'm going to try to be a timpanist. And I practiced like crazy, started really nerding out, started, you know, sending recordings to people and playing for all sorts of people in different scenarios, and started advancing at timpani auditions. And I was like, okay, well, maybe I should do this.
Yeah.
And got more, even crazier the second year, and took very serious auditions. My second year of my master's, San Francisco Symphony, Minnesota Orchestra, and New World Symphony. Eventually, I got the gig at the New World Symphony as principal timpanist of New World. So it was like, okay, I'm going to be a timpanist. Sounds good. And I'd gotten over conducting by that point. I'd kind of like accepted and moved on, and kind of had a reframing of what the timpani can do. I think the conducting element, that portion of a 2.5 years, was actually really important for me to experience. Looking at a score a certain way, yes, learning how to study a score and harmony and form and all that. Good musical skills. But also to how I look at the timpani now is different than what I was looking at it as before. You know, I think of it as a much more monumental part of a score now, rather than just like, oh, I'm just playing boom, boom, boom. Like I think of it much differently now.
Yeah.
And then also the fact that I had like put all my energy into something, and then it didn't work out, and then I had to put my energy back into a thing I already kind of knew but wasn't expert at yet. That was an interesting transition too. Sort of had like renewed passion for the instrument. Yeah, so I went to New World and met a lot of great people, great orchestra. You know, I can't say enough good things. It was definitely stressful and the most intense part of my life. I can't imagine there will be a more intense part of my life.
How many years did you do there?
2.5 years.
Oh, okay.
So the first year, there were no timpani auditions, so I played more drum set and tried branching out and doing different things because I knew there were no timpani auditions. Then the end of the first year, I had some personal things happen, and I took some time off and was like rethinking about what I was going to do. But then I knew that the second year at New World, there was going to be some serious timpani auditions. So the summer going into the second year is where I really, really cranked the gears as far as possible, doing hour-and-a-half long mock auditions and trying to memorize everything on the list, even the parts of a piece where it doesn't need to be played or it's not need to be memorized, where I really tried to raise the ceiling beyond anything I'd ever done before. And I bought instruments. I bought timpani, took out a loan. Probably, I wasn't financially super strong at that moment, but I took that risk because I knew that these are the kinds of instruments usually at auditions. And if I have my own drums, I can just kind of control that factor, maybe take them to auditions, which I didn't. I never did that with those drums, but it's just another element.
I mean, those instruments are not cheap, right? I mean, but they're also like instruments that you can use forever, right? I'm assuming.
Yeah.
So it's also an investment. It's not totally that you're just like try to do quality control on your audition experience.
True. But it was also somewhat fatalistic move, but where I was like, I'm going to win something. So I'm going to prove it to myself by doing a down payment on something I maybe shouldn't be doing right now. Mm-hmm. Of course, if I didn't make it, I would have sold them and would have gotten some money back. But it was sort of a way to test my own faith in myself.
I see.
And in addition to, you practice on your own instruments, you just get to know them. And it's usually the kind of instrument that shows up at auditions. Not always, though. Anyways, that second year, I did well at auditions, and things seemed to sort of work out as far as practicing, and the things I'd been doing seemed to be paying off, which was really great because this career is so thankless until you see that it pays off in some manner. There's no glory at all. I mean, you can post all the videos you want and get all the thanks you want, but there's no, at least monetary substance until you either get a definable gig or have some sense of security, and that doesn't happen unless you do well at something. And until that point, there aren't many pats in the back that feel good, at least, that feel true. So eventually, I got a few trials with different orchestras, and one of them was with Minnesota, and there we sit. Thank you.
No, seriously, congratulations. I mean, that is an epic story that I didn't even know all the details about.
It's kind of unbelievable. I still don't believe it.
Yeah, if you were to tell yourself in high school that you would eventually be the principal timpani of Minnesota Orchestra, you probably wouldn't, you'd be like, yeah, right.
Oh, I couldn't even conceive of that. I mean, I didn't even know what that meant. The audition path is so strange. You don't really know what it is until you start doing it consistently. And I wouldn't have that's just not an option.
So what are your upcoming projects with the Minnesota Orchestra?
Yeah, so we have a full season ahead, and I'm very, very much looking forward to it. I think so many people are looking forward to it. And, general society looking forward to some form of normalcy. Something I'm really excited about is in January, we're doing a Sibelius festival with Osmo Vanska. And so we're going to hit all the Sibelius symphonies and a few versions of the violin concerto, maybe some other pieces by Sibelius. I would love to hit more of his tone poems from the timpani perspective, but also in listening. He's one of my favorite composers, but also just a great timpani composer. Very interesting writing. So I'm looking forward to doing that with probably the chief
maestro
interpreter of Sibelius, Osmo Vanska. So, and this is his last year, which
saddens
me. What's that?
I was going to say, what a way to send off with him, though, is to play all Sibelius. After doing Mahler, pre-pandemic, you were doing all Mahler stuff, so.
And we still are doing Mahler. We're doing the 8th and 9th Symphony this year.
Wow.
So looking forward to those as well, and we're recording it. That would be the musical thing with the Minnesota Orchestra I'm most looking forward to. I'm looking forward to a variety of projects, though, that are kind of in the works in regards to community engagements and innovating an American orchestra, a great American orchestra, and what it means to this community in Minneapolis and Minnesota, to the country, and then to the broader audiences of the world. So looking forward to a lot of different things with this group.
Nice. Are you ready to take a break?
Yeah.
Okay, sounds good. We'll be right back. Welcome back from the break. So, how long have you been playing hockey? I only found out about this last winter, but I mean, apparently it sounds like you've been playing all your life.
I started skating when I was a little twerp, 3 something. I skated
Wow.
for like a couple years maybe. And then I stopped and we moved from Minneapolis to my small town, Marshall. And then my buddy encouraged me to start skating. I was about 8 or 9. So I took probably, like a 5-year hiatus. And then I've been skating ever since. I probably stopped again in college for 2 years. It was interesting, like just getting so heavily nerdy into classical music, and I just said the hell with whatever I was doing before. I'm just gonna, and how the things that I did before continue to show up even to this day. And so I still play hockey, and I'm really proud and glad that I started playing hockey and continue to. It's just such a release for me. And especially being back in Minnesota in the Minnesota Orchestra, we get ice on our lakes and you get to fly on lakes. It's a really incredible feeling. So, yeah.
Yeah. So when you started skating, it was to, as you say, like skate across a lake or whatever, right? So when did you start actually playing hockey?
Oh, yeah. Skating when I was little, was trying to survive skating. And then, hockey was about 9 years old. We would do, skating drills just to improve your technique. But it was we were playing games also, and you build the whole thing up at the same time if you're going to play the sport. And it's very, in my opinion, the most skilled sport. I'm sure there will be people that
disagree,
vociferously disagree, but I just find that it's got so many aspects that you have to be perceptive of, and it's very quick and can be very brutal. Yeah, you build up all the skills at the same time: stick handling, shooting, passing, plays, skating, positioning. That basically started when I was 9.
So were you part of leagues or anything, or was it part of your school sports? Or I'm just from San Diego, so I don't really know much about how that works,
Yeah, you're from California. It's all good. No, it's bizarre.
I mean, I love hockey though, so I'm a hockey fan. I love watching it. I just don't know how to play or how to skate at all.
Yeah, no, it's good. It's like any other sport up here where it's part of the school system. And the town I grew up in is 12,000 people, but other towns were 1,000 and they would have a hockey team. Those people would be shipping in from farms or whatever nearby area. But most schools have a hockey team, or you have a way to play hockey. So we just did that, and I did that all the way through high school.
What position did you mainly play?
I think at first I played defense, and then I moved up to wing. So that's, offense. I just kind of went back and forth between left wing and defense, I think. But now I would say I'm more of a left winger or centerman. Whenever I play, it just seems to be where I tend to.
So is that your preference, or as you say, it's where you end up?
One of the great things about the sport, it's similar to soccer, and the positioning is kind of flexible. It's way more flexible than soccer, though. I mean, defense can come play offense if the moment asks for it, and centerman can play basically all positions, is kind of flying around the ice the entire time. But there are certain kinds of plays where you just expect it, or you've seen it done before, and it just naturally goes that way. And if you're playing any position, you should be able to do any of those plays, whether you're offense, defense, or whatever wing you are. So that's what I really like, is that there's this flow and this flexibility of each position. So I guess, to really answer your question, I tend to left wing or center, but I play a bunch of pickup games where things aren't totally serious and we're not playing for glory exactly, but we're playing for good plays. And so, we kind of rotate, even though you may prefer a certain position.
But never goalie or anything like that.
No, goalie, you need padding, certain pads, you need experience to play goalie.
So whenever you get together with people, there's 2 designated goalies when you play.
Yeah, if they show up.
Okay.
I mean, these pickup games, we sign up usually for a certain kind of league. It's not an actual league where we're keeping track of points. But then, when you show up to the lake, usually there's not a goalie. Most of the time, there's not a goalie. So you're keeping track of points by hitting pipes or the posts on the goal.
I see.
Yeah, so that's the goal usually on lakes. And then pickup games, depending on where you go, hopefully a goalie shows up, maybe 2. You feel grateful when a goalie shows up, because then you're going to have more fun. Yeah.
So in the process of learning how to play hockey, as you said, you're learning all of the elements all at once, but what was the hardest element for you to overcome and in some ways master?
Well, I could start with the kind of player I am in this sport is more of a playmaker, or passing or positioning. And so I view the game from very much like a higher optic, or like I feel like knowing people's positions and then like making the correct move based on those positions. That's more of my instinctual way of playing hockey. I'd say probably my shot was something I struggled with and I didn't really know how to do, or it wasn't my forte. So that's kind of different from scoring goals, because you can make a bunch of moves and do a nifty move and score a goal, which I was also not as great at back in the day. But my shot, I really never got a good handle of that back in the day. And since then, interestingly, in relation to music, I've improved a lot at hockey just by watching it, not even practicing it. No practice at all, actually. Like the first few years where I started really getting back into it, I was watching a lot but not playing very much. And I think that really helped with instincts, but even with like technical things like a shot, like I just watched the form of professionals do it. I watched their form and then my shot just improved immediately. So it's like osmosis. It's like music where you just listen and you listen to great players enough and you will instinctually build that into your DNA, and it's just osmosis. So that's kind of an important lesson, I think, in what I took from hockey as I continued to improve at music, was watching it or listening is really just as important as practicing.
Well,
absorbing.
that's why it's so important to go to actual live concerts, if pandemic permitting.
Yeah.
But I mean, even watching a YouTube video in this newer generation is going to be helpful than nothing, or, you know, not at all. But actually immersing yourself in a concert hall is a much different aural experience that involves distance and space and acoustic that a YouTube video is without at times, you know?
Absolutely.
It's a smaller window and frame. So I'm sorry, I'm going on this tangent for a second, but I just came back from teaching and I was watching all my students perform and things like this. And I was noticing that they were doing certain motions that looked like what they probably were watching on YouTube, but it had no context based in those motions at all.
Mm-hmm.
So it was weird for me as a teacher now watching them do these and saying, oh, I think I know why. It's because they're watching all these YouTube videos and not taking it in context of what actually the soloist was doing in the hall.
Well, that's interesting. And that's the difference maybe between hockey and music, is that there are maybe standard plays in hockey, or like sort of, I'm thinking about a shot right now in hockey. Like if you actually like know the motion of that, you see it, you will get the hang of it from just even watching. You have to practice it enough times to make it consistent, of course. But with music, there's sort of a cosmetic element. We live in a visual world, whether we like it or not. And so we think like if we make that motion, it'll produce this sound, but it isn't a sonic aural experience, as you said. And so that's, you have to, you know, realize that that's where the value is first. And then the visual should accompany and help get to that value, but that's the goal. It's not visual first.
But I would also maybe argue that in hockey too, like if you are just swinging your stick around and don't really have the finesse of like feeling what it might be like to have that puck right next to your stick or something like that, that maybe...
Yes.
I mean, maybe it's a little less nuanced than music, but...
No, maybe it is more related than I said before, actually, because you obviously need to practice for consistency. But you hear a sound, you hear a certain vibrato, and if you listen to it enough times, you're just able to do it probably, right? Would you say that's... Like, you have to have the sound...
I mean, you have to know how to do it, but like once it becomes natural, it becomes ingrained.
Well, we're not talking... I mean, okay, we're not talking about, like, someone who doesn't know how to hold the stick or hold the inch. Like, we're talking about, like, someone someone in college or above. Like, if you hear it, you can maybe replicate it because you have enough technique. Mm-hmm. But once you hear it, then that should be the guiding factor in what everything else you do after that. Yeah. To get to that goal. No pun intended. Da-da.
Yeah, right.
For me, it's boom.
You're sure. God. So watching and observing hockey games, like would you go sit at a bar and watch a hockey game, or would you actually go to see the Minnesota Wild? Or
I started getting back into it in my master's degree, and I would watch clips, so I would absorb it through the digital realm. Okay. And I don't think that is a bad thing. I'm not trying to be a professional hockey player is the difference. So if I was, then I would need to, go to camps, have daily practice, and get inspired by people in the flesh if I was trying to be a pro. And it
can get you far. I didn't mean to discount it.
Yeah.
I just was noticing with my... Yeah, okay.
It's a good point, though, that it's not everything if you're trying to really excel into, expert realms of whatever industry you're in. However, it is a valid way to improve. Like, I mean, you see something, it's like, oh, if I do it like that, then... And it just it just sort of immediately improves your whole shtick, even though you may not be practicing physically. I'd watch a lot of clips of like reruns of games and highlights, and I started looking at YouTube videos like best goals in the NHL this year, ever, whatever, best stick tricks. And there isn't that for music, but we all maybe have our own kind of personal list of like, oh, I love this moment when this player in this performance did this, you know, and then that's something to aspire to. You just have to have those best moments or those best artists, or those are things definitely to inspire you to move forward.
So when you're talking about your shot and making the shot, that's more of the strategic placement of yourself amongst, as you're saying, among your other teammates, setting up a shot, like setting up that moment to someone passes to this person, that person then confuses the next, passes that, and then like one person at the last second smashes it back into the goal, right? That's what we mean by shot.
No, what you described before is more of like a play.
Okay, a play. Okay,
what I would call like a play. It's not a setup play. It's improvised. But you do.
But some aren't, though. I mean, you can see the strategy. I mean, when I've watched hockey, you can see that there's strategy to get, you know, a setup.
Yeah, you do break it down, and in practice, like, it's like, okay, we're going to maybe not quite slow this down like we would in music a lot, but we're going to practice intensely, but this is the way it's going to go down. You go here, and then it goes there. Give and go is a play where you pass it to someone, and then you're skating faster, and they give it back to you. So it's kind of the thing.
Yeah.
Something like that. But there's always an element of improv and reacting to the situation in hockey. And, you know, it's very real because of that. That's why sports are so admired, because it feels very real. Yeah, but what I meant by my shot and how it wasn't good and how it's improved is, how I aim at certain parts of the net.
Okay,
and
gotcha.
The speed of the shot, and then from different angles from the goal, you know. So, that's what I mean, is like maybe accuracy of my shot is the main thing.
So that's mainly how you handle your stick, in other words.
Yeah, it is a technical thing, yeah.
Yeah. So how did you learn how to even shoot with a stick? And what have you gained from watching these videos?
Yeah, I'd say like the flexibility of being able to shoot in any sort of position is very important as I got older. But you do need, that fundamental, like, you know, that this is where your right hand goes, this is where your left hand goes, and it goes this far down the stick when you're about to shoot. And your body, your knees ideally are a little bit bent. You're resting a little bit more like on the grounded side of your knees, and your back is positioned a certain way. There are different kinds of shots. There's a slap shot, a snap shot where you just use your wrist, and there's a wrist shot where you kind of guide the puck towards the net. Most people do a snapshot because it's a super quick motion, and you can still get a really hard and fast and accurate shot that way.
Is that mostly from your forearms then, or?
It's like a snap technique from the wrist.
Oh, it's from the wrist.
Yeah,
okay.
I mean, it is partially forearm as well, but you know, having that fundamental, you need to know those basic elements. Those elements are probably learned in the first 5 years, and then you kind of refine the upper 20% over the entire time you play hockey. Yeah, but just like anything, it takes practice, and so you need just practice from multiple angles and
like backhanded versus front-handed, I guess.
Yeah, sure. Oh, the backhanded shot, that's a whole nother, like, that's a different technique with.
Sure.
Yeah, related to music. I mean, it doesn't all perfectly have parallels, but like, you do need fundamental knowledge, and you won't get anywhere unless you have that fundamental knowledge and a certain amount of experience. But then after that, watching the pros do it, then that's where it's like, you just kind of absorb it, and it just becomes more physically instinctual. Mm-hmm. I think that's
maybe part of the follow through is what you pick up from watching.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, as you're prepping to take a shot, you obviously know that your opponent is far enough away where they're not going to get their stick in your way, so you know how to time it, and therefore your body just starts going into a position where it's ready to shoot. Mm-hmm. That kind of instinctual knowledge.
Sure.
Yeah,
that makes a lot of sense. And actually, for me, I tried to teach that in cello technique as well. Like, if you're about to shift, there's a couple motions that you have to do before you actually move.
Precisely.
Right? So it's very similar.
Precisely.
Yeah. I guess from my perspective of being a spectator of hockey, it's really great to watch the combination of the technique happening with your feet, the technique happening with your hands, and also the strategy of working on a team, and watching the gracefulness of every player in concert with each other and their own bodies and their teammates.
No pun intended. Yeah.
Well, I keep on accident doing these puns.
You got to.
But it is like a very beautiful sport to watch. It's just like this, when the team's doing well, it's a well-oiled machine that's just so, like, every motion is with such efficiency.
Yeah.
Could you also, just briefly, for anyone who may not have ever watched hockey, briefly describe some of the rules?
Well, you're skating on ice, so you're on a hockey rink, or if it's cold enough, you're skating on a lake, and you use a stick to guide a little rubber puck, a little disc. And the main goal is to get a goal by shooting that disc with the stick into the back of the net. And the net is the size of like a small bookshelf on its side or something. It's like 4 feet high, maybe 5 feet high, and 3 or 4 feet wide. And there's a goalie in front of that net. So you need to get it past this goalie who has big pads and covers most of the net. However, there are little spots open depending on the positioning of the goalie and where you're at. And so you develop your shot to get it into those little spots, or you make a move to fake out the goalie. It makes him or her think that you're going one way and you go the other way.
Right.
And then you open up a space for that net to be open and you shoot the puck into the back of the net. Then whoever has the most points wins. And usually a somewhat lower scoring game. A lot of games go 1-0. Most games are in the 3 to 5 realm of goals. It can go up to double digits though, if depending on the skill of each team. There are 5 players on each side. There's a lot of passing and a lot of plays in it. There's a lot of hard, intense skating. And from middle school onwards, although I think they changed this in Minnesota, I think 7th grade onwards, you can hit each other with the shoulder, not with the elbow, not a punch, but hit with the shoulder. Usually, you're skating and you lean your shoulder into somebody to knock them off the puck. You can't hit them unless they have the puck, though. You're not supposed to do cheap shots. Cheap shots are looked very much downwards on in the sport, which I think is great. However, it happens. Sometimes it's on accident. A lot of times it's on accident. And there's enough padding where someone isn't hurt terribly. You can get concussions. It's not as many as football. But if you know how the sport works and you got your head up during the game, then you know how to take a hit, give a hit, and it's actually not as violent as I may have described as it looks. Yeah.
Unless hockey is one of the last sports that I guess allows roughing and like fights in professional sports.
Sure.
But
yeah, I mean,
except for that.
That's true. It does happen. And that's definitely, what a lot of tough guys say, like that's the reason they joined the sport. But, you can go to any bar and, act like that if you want to. And I think the sport is truly beautiful. There are moments where something happens on accident, even something terrible happens. Someone has pulled off on a stretcher. That would be a moment where maybe you should stand up for your comrade. And, right. Certainly when that play happens, you push them. But sometimes there's somewhat of an agreement, like, okay, there's going to be a fight started over this, probably.
Mm-hmm.
I actually met somebody many months ago who was doing a dissertation, I think, on the unspoken rule of fights in hockey. I
didn't know that was a dissertation subject, but okay.
Oh, I didn't know that either. I mean, but it is an interesting thing when it's like, when does a fight start? And what are there's a sort of language of how it's going to start. And it is sort of interesting. I don't find it as primitive as some other situations where fights get out of sort.
Yeah. Also, in hockey, there's periods. There's 3 periods rather than in football, which is 4 quarters, right? So there's 3 periods. There's also 2 distinct lines that split the rink into 3 parts.
That is somewhat of a basic rule, is offsides. If you're trying to attack the goal, you're trying to go down the ice to score a goal, there's a blue line where the offensive team needs to go past. The puck must go past that blue line first with a stick.
Yeah, you can't ice it.
Before the rest of the team. So, you can't just, cherry pick and pass the puck all the way down and then everyone else can join in. Once the puck gets out of that blue line, then everyone has to come back before they can re-enter that zone.
I think this is a similar attempt at a scrimmage line in football. So no one's, as I was saying earlier, no one's icing, as in throwing the puck to the opposite side of the rink unfairly. That everything is within a certain control of play.
Yes. Well, icing is a different thing where there's a middle line in the middle of the rink, which is different from the 2 blue lines. The middle red line, you're supposed to get past that and then you can throw it all the way down. But if you're before the red line and you throw it all the way down and it doesn't touch anybody, then it'll be icing and the puck is returned all the way back into your defensive zone. So you try not to ice it because then you're going all the way back into your zone anyways. Unless, there are strategic times to ice it if you're really tired or you just want a stoppage of play or something.
Sure, right. That's true. Or the other reason to do icing is if there's a power play happening. And a power play is when someone on a team gets penalized for some other roughing or whatever, high sticks, whatever. And so that person gets put in the penalty box. And the other team has 1 extra player over the other team. So they usually have the advantage to try to score within a 3-minute period. But the other team who's down a player whose person is in the penalty box can ice as a defense mechanism to disturb all the whatever strategy is happening with the team that's...
Exactly. The team that has the extra player or the normal amount of players is 5-on-4. And the defensive team or the team that doesn't have their fifth player, they can ice the puck. That's one benefit to, it's almost a good thing in that you can have the people that's killing off the penalty. I mean, they can actually do creative plays to ice it all the way down, have someone go get it and then kill time or try to score even though they're down a player. Yeah, but they're usually 2-minute penalties. So you get,
oh, it's a 2. Sorry. Yeah. I misspoke.
It's okay. Yeah. And it's so it's like 5-on-4 for 2 minutes. Usually it could be a major penalty where it's usually 4 minutes. It depends on the severity of the penalty.
Right. I just wanted to explain some of those things because when I've taken people to watch hockey before, I've had to clumsily explain how it works because it's a little different than soccer and a little different than football and baseball, certainly. So that's where I just wanted to at least do a little bit of like a hockey 101 rules and regulations.
It's a somewhat niche game. Yeah. Amazingly how the rules come together to me, it makes this beautiful game somehow. So.
What has been your most treacherous hockey experience? Because it seems like you still have your teeth, so you're doing okay.
Amazingly so. I haven't ever gotten seriously hurt in hockey. I've been ridiculously tired.
Yeah, it's a draining sport.
Yeah.
You're like sprinting the whole time, essentially.
Right, like you're like hyperventilating from the intensity of which you have to skate sometimes. But yeah, I remember one hit that really sent me places, and I really deserved it too, because I might have been, I don't know, freshman, sophomore. And the thing you're not supposed to do, you're supposed to be this skilled where you don't even have to look at the puck on your stick. You're looking up. You look where you pass. You look where you shoot. You look if someone's coming to hit you. So I was looking down and I was looking a certain way. And I was not skating fast and I was tired, but that's not an excuse. I wasn't skating fast and I was just kind of standing and didn't realize what was coming, the truck that was coming to get me. And I passed it. It really felt like a truck just totally flattened me. I just remember falling, I'm sure my body went in the air and then I fell, like my head hit the ground. It was an incredible sensation. It took me a little bit to get up. I didn't have a concussion or anything, I don't think.
Thankfully.
But it took me a little bit to get up, and it was not a penalty. It was a good hit. I'd passed it, and then he hit me like the second afterwards. And so that's one of the brutal aspects of like a younger player playing hockey is that you have to get used to that and like know that you have to skate, never stop skating, especially if you have the puck most of the time, and just have your head up. So that's like another technique. Like it's just like a natural, like just know not to do that.
As a cellist, I can easily relate with that. Like, yeah, like we're taught so often to like look up, don't look at your fingerboard.
But some professionals do that.
Yeah.
Right?
Do you have any remaining thoughts or words of advice about your experiences with hockey?
I love the sport more than I loved it in high school now.
That's great.
And so the things that I maybe was intimidated by or tired of, and I love almost all of those things now. Hockey being the most prime example, which we've been discussing, but like I'm glad I went through what at the time maybe seemed like hell, and I wasn't that great of a player, and I'd get my ass handed to me in multiple ways, and now I've improved, and whatever. It's not even about the quality of which I play. It's just that I have so much fun doing it. It's such a great release of energy, and it's physical activity, yes. But it's something, you need something like that is a close second love to music or whatever industry you're in, because it's too much to just invest all of your energy into one thing. It's just simply you'll become neurotic, and it's just not totally healthy. So I am really happy that that's my second love in life.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe one day I can creep over and watch you play, but
we should go skating sometime, obviously.
Well, or I was gonna say we should gather some people and go to a Minnesota Wild game if the pandemic is permitting.
Hell yeah, we should. Yes,
let's do it.
All right.
May I ask you 2 final questions?
Yes.
What is one piece of advice you would tell your younger self about entering and pursuing a music career?
Well, something I would advise if I was talking to a younger person, I'd say persevere. Easy to say. Each person's path is different. There are different moments where perseverance is more required or less required. But I'd say for my personal younger self, I actually persevered. Yeah, that was maybe one of the good sides of something I could handle, actually, is persevering through tough times. I'd say balance between family, your relationships with people, physical activity, health, other interests. I'd say I could have done a better job at that. And so I would advise to myself, that my younger self, in college particularly, but even at New World, in my mid-20s, a little bit more balance, because I really put so much energy in, every hour of the day was focused around practice. Not even performance necessarily, practice, because the practice made the performance in a sense, but even resting and what I ate at what time did I work out, if I worked out, all that stuff was around how's it going to affect my practice. And I wish I would enjoy nature a little more, really invest in a book, or I did those things very sparingly, and I felt guilty about it when I did it. Not reading a book, but taking a vacation. Even rarely took vacations, or if I did, it was brief. So I'd say balance and all sorts of things would be something I'd advise to my younger self.
That is also a great answer, and I don't think it's been said yet on the podcast. Balance is such a difficult thing to achieve, because, especially as you say, as a student, because you want to push yourself to the grind and get as much as you can out of your education. But as we're also saying, as you were saying about hockey, if you only focus on music, it makes you a one-dimensional person.
Yeah.
And that's, at the end of the day, we are just living life for ourselves, and there's a lot more than just one part of your life. And this extends outside of music. It's just because we have specialized in music, and that was a part of us. But yeah, this can apply to anyone in any field, as well as to find balance in one's life.
Certainly. And I don't mean balance, just to be clear, 50% is music and 50% is other stuff. Most of it should be music, for sure. And if you're young, especially if you're first few years in conservatory or university, you should be practicing like a crazy person. But there comes a time when it's okay to, take a vacation, really let go into an activity, or let go and don't feel guilt that you're not practicing your ass off at, something.
Right. And my second question, as we enter a semi-post whatever pandemic-ish world, an ever-evolving world,
sure,
what elements of your musical pandemic life would you want to continue, and what would you want to shed?
I want to stop just being in my apartment only, but that's kind of been happening this past summer anyways. I'd love to shed only staying here, and I can't wait to travel again at some point, especially out of the country, whenever it's deemed appropriate, which I guess it is now. The thing I'm going to keep though, is something I longed for even before the pandemic, which is actually more practice. But I don't mean that in this, I'm practicing only timpani and timpani excerpts. I mean, practicing piano, practicing these other genres of music, and thinking about composition and more things I can contribute. And I'm going to invest more in that side of things that I'm more amateur at. And I'm excited for that. Those were things I couldn't do before the pandemic as much. And now I'm interested in incorporating into the broader balance of my artistic output. So I am looking forward to all those things. And as they kind of naturally develop, we'll see where it goes.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Are there any platforms or websites for our listeners to learn more about you, or any upcoming projects?
Probably Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. I'm starting to use with my raised eyebrows. Not totally convinced about it, but yes. So TikTok, Instagram, Facebook are the main ways. And if someone listening has a question about anything that we've talked about, or really anything, I'm fairly open book. So you can just reach out to me on those platforms and try to answer it. Instagram is The Ripple Effect, and it's spelled the RIEPPEL effect. And I think that's the same for TikTok. And then my Facebook's my name. I play in the Minnesota Orchestra, so you should listen to the Minnesota Orchestra. I think we're one of the world's finest ensembles, and we do interesting stuff. We're constantly adapting with times while also paying tribute to the great music of the past. You can listen to us most Friday nights on Minnesota Public Radio, Friday nights, 8 p.m. Central. But we have a lot of stuff online too, on YouTube, on our Facebook, Instagram. So you can find any of our performances there, or you can go to our website and find other elements of what we do there.
Awesome. And if you enjoyed listening, be sure to smash that subscribe button wherever you're tuning into this podcast. Leave a review on Apple Podcasts while you're at it. It doesn't need to be long. Your review will help others search for the podcast because of its crazy algorithms, and you'll make Sushi's Day, and it's free. Make sure to share this podcast with your friends and family as well. If you want to level up, you can always become part of the Haydn Behind the Music Stand family by donating what you will on our Patreon page at patreon.com/Haydn Music Stand. Our social media handle for Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter is at Haydn Music Stand, and we'd love to hear from you at our email, haydnmusicstand@gmail.com. Didn't recognize a piece we discussed during the episode? No worries, there's a Spotify playlist with all the music discussed for your convenience. The link is in the description of each episode. Erich, thank you so much for your time today. It's always a pleasure hanging out with you, and I look forward to our next hangout sesh. I don't know when it's going to be, but it's going to be soon.
It's going to be soon. Yeah. Thanks so much for having me. It was really fun. Great.
Thank you. Yeah. And thanks for listening. Say bye, Sushi.